listening to America First Radio. Here is your host, Paul Adams.
Okay, we are now taking our sights off Soros, folks. Public enemy number one. He's top of the agenda, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Soros later. The other clear and present danger is Paul Ryan. Dump him. He's got to go. He's a globalist tool, a traitor. Okay, enough said about that. Onwards. Now here's an interesting term. Internalized misogyny is now the official reason given by the Hillary Clinton campaign for her demise at the polls. I think the story should be filed under a special kind of stupid. You know, that's like saying that she didn't get elected because she wasn't a 10. And who voted for Hillary? Okay, that's what we would like to know. Who in the right mind would vote for a felon who faces jail time for racketeering, let alone charges for treason, espionage, you name it? Well, here's who voted for her. CNN exit polls showed that 54% of women voted for her, 94% of black women voted for Clinton, for mostly, let's guess here, economic reasons. And 47% of white women who simply wanted a president with a vagina also voted for Hillary. You see, folks, even white people vote for Hillary. So what's this racist baiting all about? It just goes to show you the hold that the MSM still has on a few people who just refuse to think for themselves. Bottom line is Hillary is a serial criminal who can't be trusted to walk a dog around the block. So get over it. Plus, she smells bad. And one tweet alluded to that. Would be nice if the left could just internalize that their candidate stunk. Now, the theme of this podcast is 11 things we learned from this election. And I'll get into the brass tacks here in a minute. But first, some updates. Since Donald Trump was elected, he has agreed to not take a presidential salary. He'll work for just a token $1. And what can I say to that? You know, what can you possibly say other than thank God for Donald Trump? Team Trump has released a list of 29 world leaders and counting who have reached out to Donald Trump. And since he has been made president-elect, Russia and Syria have publicly announced wanting to make peace with the United States. The Israeli Prime Minister announced that he wants to repair the damaged relationship between Israel and the U.S. The Dow closed at an all-time high, and Canada and Mexico have announced they're willing to renegotiate NAFTA with the U.S. That's all within days of electing Donald. More good news. All and any lobbyists have been purged from the Trump transition team. There should not be a shred of evidence that any Beltway lapdogs are in his team. Zero, zilch, nada. We are starting with a clean slate, even if that means taking in greenhorns with no prior insider experience, because optics right now are everything. We are refurbishing the nation from the ground up, and we can't use the same old furniture. And Donald has also called his Jewish son-in-law, Jared Kushner, as an advisor. And I think that is one way to deflect the racist invective that's been thrown at him. It would also be nice on his part if he named all the Jewish folks in his company and campaign who have been associated over the years with him. I mean, there are so many, and if anything, you could fault him for having too many Jewish people in his organization. In the meantime, there are more calls for assassinations from the left. They keep surfacing as the Secret Service is quick to oblige with a knock on their door early in the morning and arrest them. The director of the movie Avengers, Joss Whedon, is stating in no uncertain terms that President-elect Trump must not have a term in office. And to me, that is a veiled threat. He needs to be arrested. Now, Bernie Sanders, the Marxist in raps, must be taking orders from Soros, who is hell-bent on an American Spring. Because Bernie said, quote, "Our job is to oppose Trump vigorously through millions of people in many, many different ways. I am very worried that a President Trump may take us back to where we were before, and we in the progressive community are not going to allow that to happen. We have traveled too far to descend back into racism and sexism." End of quote. Bernie, you need to take a long walk into the sunset. You know, Marxism, Leninism's thin veneer has worn off long ago with the regressive economies of Cuba and Venezuela. And then we have Obama in Greece. This is the same putz who openly admitted to training ISIL on camera. And while in Greece, Obama's last pitch for New World Order was, "We have to defend against a crude form of nationalism." To which I say, there's nothing wrong with an us and them world. In fact, that is the litmus test of civilization, respecting those who are different from us. There is no challenge, no test if everyone is of the same tribe. Globalism is a sugar-coated cyanide pill, folks. It's a Luciferian, totalitarian system masquerading as enlightened political science. If a nation is an extrapolation of a household, what have we learned from this election? Here we go. Other than that, the same white people who voted for Obama also voted for Trump. And maybe voted for Hillary, too. I mean, there are white people out there who are voting for Hillary. Number one, we've learned that the prostitute, the MSM, is more than capable of applying Alinsky's rule number 5, which is ridicule. By now, we should know all their tactics, backwards and forwards. We can't let them bait us. We need to call them on it. If you want to listen to lies, all you're going to do is turn on the MSM. The MSM is now actually aiding and abetting the destabilization of America. They are in the dirty business of distorting reality, not reporting reality. They are accessories. They are attributing all the evil in the world to Trump. Meanwhile, they forget that Hillary got busted rigging the primary. She told coal miners she was going to put coal companies out of business. She has endangered the national security and lied shamelessly about it. She has called half the country deplorable. And yet the media is still like, how in the world did she lose? How in the world, how could she possibly have lost? Doesn't it add up? It just boggles the mind. You know, the mainstream media back in the day, the days of William McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt, used to be called the Yellow Press. I think maybe it should be called the Green Press now because it's just sickening to watch. You know, what they'll do is throw a few morsels of truth just to bait us into watching them, and then they just pile on the lies. You know, if it wasn't for WikiLeaks, we would all be hoodwinked. And according to Breitbart, roughly one-third, that's 32% of Clinton voters, believe the press was pro-Clinton. Well, no kidding. And 78% of people say media coverage during the 2016 election was biased. In fact, a Media Research Center president Mr. Brent Bozell, says the poll shows the press is in a panic mode after Trump's victory. Quote, the media are in full panic mode because the American people rejected the leftist agenda and them. People didn't believe the nonsense that the media were politically neutral. And that state of panic will only intensify as more reliable alternative news sources spring up. See, controlling the masses is becoming harder and harder for the globalists. They're just losing the information war, and they know it, and we know it, that they know it. Folks, I tossed out my TV set back in 2008. I don't need programming. I don't need to be programmed. I prefer being unplugged, just doing my own thinking. The other thing we learned, number 2, is that the two-party system is a fiction. We should have known that long, long ago. To say that the DNC has self-imploded is an understatement. I mean, spirit cooking, really? You know, that was the cherry on the top. Net, the Republicans won 11 Senate seats, 60 House seats, 14 governorships, and 900 state legislative seats. I've often said we don't need to flail in the wind every 4 years trying to pick between left and right. The choice is only between America and globalism. Because, folks, both the left and the right are controlled and bought by the globalists. And besides, and more to the point, nations are like households. They go through hardships and times of plenty, boom and bust cycles. They pull their horns in when the going gets tough, and when they have the basics covered, then they can start splurging and investing and taking risks. Sometimes a household, just like a nation, will need bailing out. And in this case, my thinking is, since the middle class bailed out the too big to fail banks, it's time now for the banks to bail out the middle class. The corporations need to put some skin in the game here. The leverage the United States has is the size of its markets. If this was Albania or Belgium, it would be a different story. There, the globalists have the upper hand and can have their way. But the two-party system is an illusion. And besides, who would want to call themselves Democrat after the DNC stole a nomination, after the DNC has been exposed in an intricate scam which colludes with the media? What kind of American would call himself or herself a Democrat? You would really have to be addicted to government dependency to want to be called a Democrat. And the irony is that way back in the day of Jefferson and Hamilton, there used to be a Democratic Republican Party, which was the American political party of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, which was formed in opposition to the more centralized Federalist Party, which was headed by Alexander Hamilton. So, call it whatever you want to call it. It's nomenclature at this point in time. The two-party system gives us the illusion of choice. But the same people who are backing Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush were backing Hillary. The same powers that fuel wars under the Democrats are the same powers that fuel wars under the Republicans. To keep the con game alive, both parties blame each other, and yet the national debt keeps growing exponentially. The wars never cease because, you see, war is the most profitable business there is. Like the book said, war is a racket. See, if we had peace in the world, not only would it not be profitable, but it would not usher in a totalitarian, Luciferian age, a one-world government, because it can only be ushered in after the world goes through a cataclysmic world war. You see, they have to have a problem, they need a reaction to the problem, and then they introduce their solution to the problem. They create the problem, they wait for the masses to beg for a solution, and before you know it, they introduce the solution. And the two-party system is the mechanism that keeps us distracted as we are at each other's throats while the puppet masters behind the curtains manipulate our emotions. Here's a great tweet that sums it all up. Democrats don't like the Electoral College, but have no problem with superdelegates. I think the Democrats have just invented a new mental illness, democratic dementia. Oh yeah, and before I forget, the Democratic Party leadership has announced their overwhelming support for Representative Keith Ellison, a Democrat from Minnesota, to become the new DNC chair. This far left-wing congressman has past ties to the Nation of Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood, and holds very dangerous policy positions. There you go, DNC, you've outdone yourselves. What else have we learned? Number 3, we learned that globalists want to introduce a new world order and they won't go away. Well, kind of ties into number 2, doesn't it? For the first time, the curtains don't have parted, and we can see the people behind the maneuvering, the manipulating, the subterfuge, all these covert activities. And we are beginning to zero in on the puppet masters. Soros is hell-bent on taking America down, and he must be arrested for inciting insurrections for sedition. And this is a huge meme, folks, on Twitter right now. Soros should be made an example so that no one else that has ideas of playing God with America will even try this. Bush, they all talk a great game. But when they get into power, they do exactly the opposite of what they promised. Just look at Obama, the Marxist Islamic peon, Soros' protege, who was groomed to fuel the clash of civilizations between Islam and Christianity. It is a slow, deliberate, well-orchestrated master plan they've hatched in their Bilderberg meetings, in trilateral commission meetings. It's no coincidence that the Al Smith dinner was presided by a cardinal. It's all hidden in plain sight. So, number 4, we've learned that it takes a billionaire American patriot, beholden only to the American people, to give America back to the people. Now that is a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. But here's the conundrum. If it takes a billionaire in every election who is not accountable to anyone, and then we find out that he won't even accept a salary, kudos to him, what does that say about our situation? What happens after his terms are up, assuming he has 2 terms? Who else can even aspire to be president if he or she is not beholden to the globalists? This is a serious, serious issue, folks. Elections cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So we need to really, really redefine America while Trump is in power. Number 5, we've learned, or we've been reminded, that elections are open to fraud. Nothing new here. Only this time we got a glimpse of how prevalent it is and who are the perpetrators. We have to thank the Veritas Project. The voter fraud always seems to come from the left. I shouldn't say the left. It's more like the globalists, to be more precise. And so how do we solve the problem? Again, let me reiterate my solution. It's not rocket science, okay? First of all, we need to define and authenticate U.S. citizens. Every U.S. citizen should be biometrically registered in a database, either with an eye scan or other foolproof biometric. There's no point going any further if we can't at least know who is a citizen and who is not a citizen. We don't have time for half measures, half-baked ideas. Next, we need to install a mainframe that is dedicated to elections on the national, state, and local level. No more local servers on the precinct level that can be switched around or rigged. Next, we let people vote from home, okay, using a dedicated digital device like a tablet, a mini laptop, that connects to the U.S. mainframe, you get one vote per election cycle, whether local, state, or federal. No more rushing to precincts to wait for hours in line. And you can only access your voting device with a password and a biometric scanner. And that's how you eliminate voter fraud. Now, we can integrate the Electoral College or the popular vote. To me, it really doesn't matter. Once we have a zip code in there, we'll know who these voters are. Okay, I have a hard time wrapping my head around the Electoral College. I know it's been around forever, but I just can't see how a state with only 3 electoral votes can be at par with a state that has 55 electoral votes. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the popular vote that decides the number of electors. This nation, we've learned, is under God. Okay, that's number 6. As I've said before, I believe that angels were at play here, looking over America, folks, in this election. I think angels reversed some of the fraud, some of the rigging. The corollary to that is that Lucifer wants to control America. He wants to control every aspect of our life, to the point of reducing us to automatons without any free will. And he's doing it slowly, like boiling the proverbial frog. Look, I'm not a self-proclaimed prophet or oracle with a mission here, okay? I only report what I experienced. And what I experienced early one morning is that God told me He did intervene. But from now, going forward, we need to fix our own problems. America long term. What if a new sheriff comes in town, a new president is elected, let's say in 20 years, and he reverses all Trump's initiatives? We would be back to square one. This is what worries me. And again, this is where out-of-the-box thinking is required to fix the systemic structural defects that have been there for such a long time. We need to create a democracy that is truly of, by, and for the people. You see, the Constitution is the product of radical founding fathers who bucked at the status quo. They wanted to have a government where the people are the employers and the government is the employee. And I think with our technology now, we should be able to do that and do it very transparently. So the founding fathers came up with 7 articles in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which was really an afterthought, the first 10 amendments. And that was the best they could do with the tools they had at hand. They didn't have the internet, they didn't have the concept of online accounts. And so my point is the Constitution is a framework, but it is a malleable, pliant, flexible, amenable to amendment instrument. This is why we don't just have 10 amendments, we have 27 amendments. This is why there have been over 11,500 propositions for amendments since the inception of the Constitution, which took effect on March 4th, 1789. And so I ask, what is wrong with making the case for a government that empowers the people using the latest technologies? What would the founding fathers have done in our situation if they were alive today? What is wrong with reinforcing the foundation and eliminating the systemic structural defects? What is wrong, say, with giving the people final veto power on things like certain bills, certain executive orders, constitutional amendments, even life and death issues like capital punishment, marriage, abortion? Why should we be held hostage to the whims of the Supreme Court? Why should we flail in the wind every election as we try to decide whether to vote conservative or liberal? We have the technology, folks. It's the decisions can be made by us, the people, through technology. You see, with a House of Reps and a Senate, the globalists can very easily bribe them. They can bribe a few hundred people in Congress, but they cannot bribe a few 100 million people. Do you see where I'm getting at? It's the middlemen that are the weak link. As long as there's going to be people in the world in powerful positions, and as long as there's going to be globalists, that interplay, that dependency, codependency will exist. So we have to think ahead. After Donald Trump, what do? I guess I'm a bit of a futurist, and when I think of America in the year, let's say 3000, for the life of me, I cannot imagine us living through this kind of backwards republic, where elected officials are at the beck and call of donors and not the people. It simply doesn't compute for me. It doesn't compute for me that the people cannot initiate the impeachment and removal of a rogue president or an attorney general or an FBI director. What we have right now is a government of, by, and for the special interest groups, not of, by, and for the people. If the lawmakers are not doing the people's bidding, then the people should be able to press the eject button. Don't you agree? Am I making any sense here? Or am I just talking to myself? You can write me, okay? The email is americafirstradio@gmail.com. Tell me what you think. Write some ideas down. And don't forget to follow me on Spreaker. So as our numbers get bigger, we can move on to bigger platforms, have more penetration. The eighth thing that we learned, number 8, we learned that Hillary Clinton is part of the Soros-funded Purple Revolution. Purple being the amalgam or byproduct of red and blue. In other words, they realize that the two-party paradigm no longer serves their purpose, and they are fomenting a purple revolution, just as Soros fomented an orange revolution. But folks, this is America. This is not some whacked-out post-Soviet satellite basket case with no industry or military. Soros, you are making a dreadful miscalculation here. The emails that were hacked from the account of Clinton campaign chairman and Soros ally John Podesta disclose. They also indicate the 85-year-old Hungarian-born heavyweight, through his top aides, freely reached out to Podesta to make Soros' wishes clear on issues ranging from trade to migration to the Supreme Court. That cannot continue. Number 9, we need whistleblowers to give us the truth, we've learned. People like Julian Assange, who will gather leaked intel and then publish it. We cannot be transparent without a backup system of whistleblowers. And no, it wasn't the Russians who hacked into the DNC and Hillary's private server. It was American operatives who prized the Republic above their own safety. The other thing we've learned, number 10, the social media is a product of the collective consciousness. I call it the hive. This is a new collective cloud, if you will. This collective consciousness is replacing the mainstream media. The social media, if we can call it, let's say, the collective cloud, is the future. The truth will be gauged by a few new benchmarks, which have nothing to do with talking heads on the mainstream media and everything to do with memes, tweets, messages, uploaded videos on social media. And I'm discounting Facebook here. I've deleted my account on Facebook. I don't trust Mark Zucchini anymore. The power of this collective cloud is directly proportional to the number of people tuning into it and tuning out of the mainstream media. The trend is irreversible. It's not stoppable. It's not censorable. It's free speech as it was meant to be. It is actually self-censoring because people online demand sources from others. You know, where did you get that story? Can you corroborate it? Or is this pure hot air, pure bunk? People demand sources by which to judge the merits of a story. Stories have to be corroborated, and there's no room for trolls, okay? We can spot them a mile away. They're instantly blocked in a heartbeat. So this is the future, folks. That's what we've learned. Number 11, we've learned that we need to think out of the box for long-term solutions. If we want to remain a republic, if we want to redefine the distribution of wealth in a new, equitable, dynamic construct, there is no room for same old solutions that take us forward 2 steps, backwards 10 steps. That's the definition of insanity. We need people to start rational discussions. Rules for radicals have to go out the window. They simply don't work. It's time to grow up, mature into a deep, rational, altruistic nation, not a bunch of babies. And that's what I think we've learned from this election, folks. We need to put the fires out before they start. Soros has got to go. So, until next time, God bless America. God bless Donald Trump.